Right guys, so in this tutorial I'm going to take you through just a quick introduction of how to make a real simple bump map. I'm just going to explain quickly how they work and kind of like what you would use them for. And this is kind of what we're going to end up with, okay? So here I've just got an image plane with a flat texture on it. If I rendered, you'll be able to see it's fairly flat. There's no detail, so all it's got on there is what's called a diffuse texture. If I move on to the next one, it's actually the same amount of polygons. It's still a flat plane, but this one's got a bump map on it. Okay, so real simple texture that creates the illusion that some parts of the image are more raised than others. Okay, and then the last one I have here is just to show you how many polygons you would need in order to get that effect through modeling. Okay, so if I just turn on my polygon count, I'll talk you through it. So it's just display, heads up display, poly count. I'll try and make this file available to everyone. If it's any of my students, it'll just be on Learning Zone. Alright, so this first set is obviously it's plane, so it's two triangles. This one's two triangles, exactly the same. Only difference is it has a bump map applied. And then it's down here to get the same effect with the extrusions and edge loops is 582. So you're saving yourself 580 triangles, which obviously when it comes to making games and animation, you want to make it as low poly as you can. Okay, so that's what we're going to end up doing in Maya. It's very quick in Maya. Most of the stuff we're going to end up doing is actually in Photoshop. So we're going to end up making a texture that looks a bit like this, and then from there we're going to end up making a grayscale image, which is going to be our bump map. Okay, I'm going to talk you through how to do that, and it's fairly simple. Okay, so to start off with, I'm actually using a couple of images which I got from CG Textures. So if it's any of my students, I'll zip these up, I'll put them on our VLE for you. If it's anybody else, I just highly recommend you go to CG Textures. I'll show you the name of them now so you can download them real quickly. The first one is Brick Small Brown 0261_1. Just a plain titleable brick texture. And then the next one, which I just grabbed randomly, was Doors Wood 0003_M. Okay, we're actually just going to end up combining these two to get us a nice texture. Okay, so first things first, we're just going to go into Maya and we're going to make a new scene. So from here all we're going to do is make a polygon plane, and that's what we're going to use to export out of UV. So this is stuff I've kind of covered in previous lessons and tutorials. So start off with a couple ways you can do it. You can go to polygons up here and then choose Polygon Plane, or you can go to create Polygon Primitives and then plane. The reason I use this menu quite often is sometimes I have my shelves turned off. Okay, so what we're going to do is just click and drag until we get our plane. From here I just want to rotate it. So some people do this like different ways. Anytime I'm doing rotations, I normally just use the attributes editor, or sorry, the channels box up here. And the reason I find this quite handy is you can just enter in the values. Okay, so we want to rotate it in the X 90 degrees. We're just going to move it up so it's sitting just on top of the plane. Okay, so shortcut for that is just W. Right. So from here what we want to do is we just want to take a quick look at the UVs for this, so the UV coordinates for texturing. So if anyone's not familiar with that, I've done a cereal box tutorial. It'll talk you through how to do UV texture layouts, how to sew them together and stuff. Because this is just a plane, it's going to be real quick. Okay, so again, to get in there, I just use the long menus. You can use the button up here, just Window, UV Texture Editor. Okay, so that's our UV texture editor there. So if we select this front face, you can see that's where our texture is going to go. And to be honest, I'm quite happy with that. I'm not going to change anything. All I'm going to do is I'm going to save this out so we can then work on it in Photoshop. Okay, so the way we save it out is make sure you're in object mode. Again, I'm going to go through this real quick because I've covered this in previous lessons and tutorials. So if you want to go through it again, by all means just click back through my channel. So make sure you're in object mode, go to polygons, and we'll choose UV Snapshot. Okay, settings for this, obviously check your file name, make sure you know where you're sending it. Okay, like make sure you know where this is going. So for me, I'm just going to put it in the folder called Matty, which is just where something I've got saved on my C drive. I'm going to give it a name. So naming convention is important. I normally start with what it is. UV underscore what's called wall, right? And I'll use uppercase just because it's easier for me to find. We'll just hit save there. Okay, now these are the next big settings you want to make sure you get right. Like normally you want to go with a minimum of 1024 by 1024. You can obviously upscale this if you're working for really high quality models, like next gen texturing. You could go 2048 by 2048. It's totally up to you guys, but I'll leave mine at 1024 by 1024. I normally leave mine on PNG. I'll explain to you in a second why I do that. So as long as you've got rough settings like this, make sure you know where you're saving it. Just hit OK. Alright. Maya will always tell you if it's saved it properly, so it says save file, tell me where it is. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to open that up in Photoshop. Okay, so all I'm doing is finding my UV file, and this is it here. Okay, it's a bit hard to see at the minute. It makes you one layer called layer 0, and this is why I use a PNG, because I find this quite handy. So what we're going to do now is we're going to bring in those other textures. So again, there's a couple of ways you can do this. You can go file, place. The way I like to do it is I like to open up all my files in Photoshop first, like this, and whichever one I want to drop in first, I just pull it off the taskbar so it becomes undocked. Okay, so from there, all I want to do is grab my move tool up the top and click and drag it into the Photoshop document. Okay, now I can close this. Now that's layer 1. If I drag it underneath, you can see I can still see my UV. It's very faint, but I can actually still see my UVs, and that's why I decided, there's a little line there, that's why I decided to use PNG instead, because I like to have my UVs sitting on top of everything else. So from there, we want to do the same with our wood or wooden door. So what we'll do is pull that off the taskbar so it's a floating window, grab our move tool, just drop it in. Okay, now we can close that because we don't need it. So the other way of doing that is you can go file, place, and you can place it in. Okay, but placing it, what it'll do is it'll put in a smart object instead of an actual layer. Okay, so real quickly, a bit of housekeeping, we'll just name these. So we'll name this door. So all we do is double click on the name, and then we'll name this wall. Alright, first of all, it's way too big, so what we're going to do is just scale it. So Control and T on your keyboard. I'm just going to link the aspect ratio, just using that little chain. You can use Shift if you want, and I'm just going to get this roughly right. Okay. So if I think that's a grand scale of the wall, so maybe about there. Okay, and we can adjust this later on if we get it wrong. Okay, so I'm happy with that. From there, I'm probably going to scale my wall a bit because my wall texture came in actually quite small. So I'll just drag that out like that. Right, that's fine. Right, I'm just going to hit enter. So what we want to do now is we want to get rid of this existing brick wall texture that came with our door file. So I have a very specific way of working with stuff. I try to use layer mask, so I'm not actually deleting stuff. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to use a layer mask to get around this. So all I'm going to do is just going to zoom in so I can see the edge of this a little bit better. Okay, so shortcuts for these is Control and plus, Control and minus. I'll zoom you in and out. And what we're going to do is we're going to select the door first, the bit that we want to keep. Okay, so I'm going to use this third tool down. If you click and hold, you've got a polygon lasso tool, or lasso tool, sorry. So every time you click now, it'll make a new point. Whenever you're finished, you hit enter, and that's your selection. Okay, if you make a mistake, Control and D will get rid of your selection. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to real quickly select around this door, right? And if I make little mistakes, it's not the end of the world. I can come back and fix them, because I'm not actually going to delete these pixels. I'm just going to hide them. Okay. Right, so I'm happy there. I'm just going to push enter. Okay, so from here, all I'm going to do is come down here in my layers panel. I'm just going to hit this layer mask button. Okay, what that does, turns your selection into a real fast layer mask, like real quick. You don't have to worry about anything else. Right. So that layer mask has now been applied. Okay, in previous tutorials I've gone through how they work. I'm not going to get into it too much today. Alright, so this is a bit harsh. All we're going to do is just fade it down a bit. So I'm just going to grab a brush. I'm just going to use a smaller brush, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit. Okay, and I'm just going to paint out a little tiny bit of that. Alright, so as long as I make sure I'm on my layer mask, I'm going to use black paint because that's invisible, and I'm just going to hold down shift and I'm going to paint that little bit out. Okay, so I get like a bit of a softer edge, and I've still got some stuff here as well that I might want to get rid of. So I'm on a 50% opacity. If I turn this up, it might be a bit quicker. Right, so what we're doing is we're not actually deleting any pixels, we're just hiding them. Okay, and I find that's, well, for me anyway, that's the best way for me to work, because quite often I come back, I change my mind, I go away from a project and I realize that it would look better if I brought some pixels back. Right, so all we're doing there is just cleaning up those little edges a little bit. I'm just going to do this bottom one here. There you go, just shift. So all I'm doing is clicking once, holding shift, and then clicking again. But you can paint it bit by bit if you want. Right, so that's looking not too bad. So what we're going to do now is we want to do like a little bit of just color adjustment on this. Okay. So we just want to try and make it match. So we'll go image adjustments. I quite often like to use the levels. Okay, and all we're doing is just trying to get the levels of the bricks to match the levels of the door. Right, so I kind of think it'd be nice if I turned that down. I got some more contrast on that, and then if I do the same with the wall. And again, this is not, I'm not giving you instructions on how to do this. I would like you to just use your eyes. Okay, so that to me looks a little bit better. It's kind of a little bit punchier. Okay, so that seems working fine. What we're going to do is we're going to save a version of this file, and we're going to save this as a PNG. We're going to put the texture on, see how it looks. Okay, so that's the first step. So always keep two versions of your document. Okay, so I'm going to file, save as, and I'm just going to bring this over so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so this is my UV underscore wall. I'm going to save a PSD version of this. That's like my working file that I can constantly come back to. And now I'm going to save a version that I'm going to put on my model in Maya. So I'm going to save a PNG for this. Okay, I'm going to add an underscore here. I call it underscore text because it's a texture. I'm just going to hit save. Right. Say OK for the options. Now if we pop back into Maya, what we want to do now is we want to apply this texture. Okay, so we need to give it a new material. So if you hold down your right click, assign new material. You need to be in object mode for this. It's easier if you're in object mode. We'll get a list of peers. Okay, sometimes on slower computers that might take a while. I'm going to choose a Lambert because I just want it to be flat. If you wanted like a wet texture, you could do like a Fong shader. I'm just going to go with Lambert for this. All right. Now here's your set of options. Okay, so we can name this straight away. Let's name this wall, so it's easier for us to find this texture later on if we need. Now where it says color, we want to plug something into this. We don't want to use a default color. Just come over here to the checker box, click on it once. Again, this might take a while to load up. It's asking us what do you want to plug in. We want to plug in a file, and then we just use this little folder icon to find our file. Alright, so I say mine and Matty. There it is there. Getting a nice preview for it. I just hit open. Right. Doesn't display straight away. All you got to do is push 6 on your keyboard. Right. That'll bring in your textured view. Okay, so that's looking alright. That's not looking too bad. If we hit render, so just the clapperboard here, the render current frame, you can see that looks not too bad. Okay, so that's us done with the texture. Like real quick. Again, people in my lesson, you complete this task quick enough, I want you to try something a bit harder. I want you to put some vines in here, maybe some moss, maybe some pipes or some wires. Like really experiment with it. So what we're going to do now is we're going to make a bump map to go with this. Okay. So for anyone who's not experienced with bump maps, basically what it is, it's just a texture that tricks the software, tricks the render into making you think that stuff is raised and stuff is lowered. Okay, so a quick PowerPoint here to show you how it works. Right, so this is how bump maps work. So black is flat and it's furthest away, so if anything's black it's right at the back, it's got no lifts on it, it's got no raises on it. If anything's white it's raised up, like it's closest to you. Okay, so to kind of sum this up here, here's an example of a texture I made. You'll notice the black is not raised at all. The grey bumpy is slightly raised. The lighter grey bumpier is even more raised, and the white bumpiest is raised totally. Okay, and that's how bump mapping works. Okay, so anything you want to be flat, you want to be right at the back of your file, you just make it black. Anything you want to be slightly raised, you can use like a slight tone of grey. Lighter greys will raise it up a bit more. Okay, so this is kind of what we're going to end up doing. We're going to take our diffuse texture, mixing it with a nice bump map, and we're going to get a nice kind of raised effect. Okay, right, so back into Photoshop. What we're going to do now is we're going to make a couple of new layers. Okay, so I'm going to resave this file. Make sure if that's saved right. So first things first is we're going to get the back of the thing, the back wall, right where the mortar is. I want that to be totally flat. So all I'm going to do is new layer, edit, fill, and then out of these options here, we're going to choose black. Okay. And I'm going to call that back wall slash mortar. Okay. Right, now on top of that, I'm going to turn that off for a second. We're going to make some bricks. Okay, so we're going to make some brick texture. So make a new layer, and we're going to call this bricks. Now, I kind of want the shape, but I don't want to have to go through and paint this. Okay, so if I click on my wall layer, I'm going to go fourth tool down, I'm going to grab the magic wand tool. I'm just going to click on one of my bricks to see what happens. Okay, so I've selected quite a bit there. And then I'm going to go up to my menu, we'll select and then similar. And now you notice it's selected all my bricks. Now, with that selection made, I'm just going to click on my bricks layer, and I'm going to go edit, fill, but this time I'm going to use 50% grey. Okay. So Control and D will deselect. Now if I turn on my black layer, this is the start of my bump map. So you can see the black stuff's going to be 100% flat. The 50% grey stuff's going to be slightly raised, and now I'm going to keep building on top of that. So if you think about the way this would work, the way this door would actually look, the door is going to have to be fairly flat. Okay, so what we're going to do next is we're going to make a shape around the door. I'm going to be a bit lazy for this. I'm going to use the rectangle tool. Okay, so the rectangle tool is down here. There's a couple of tools underneath your text tool. Sometimes it'll be a custom shape tool. What you want to do is click and hold, get the rectangle tool. Okay, I'm going to click and drag a rectangle around the door. Right, you can't see it at the minute because it's underneath the door. Okay, so there it is there. Now I want that to be the middle bit of the door, because I want the middle bit of the door to be quite flat. So if I just scale that a little bit, so just Control and T, I'm going to scale this until I'm roughly happy with it. Okay. That looks alright. Okay. So to make this a bit easier, I'm just going to turn down the opacity of that layer. Okay, so we can kind of see what's underneath it. Okay. So we call that door main. Right, so the outside of the door we want to be raised maybe further than the bricks. Okay, so we're going to make a new rectangle again. So double click here, and now I can go with something closer to white. Okay, now this is in the wrong order, so if I put that underneath, now you can see how we're going to get this shape together. Right, I'll turn down the opacity of that as well. I am going pretty quick for this, okay? Right, and then we're going to do the windows. Right, so if you think about it, the windows should actually be further back than the door main. Okay, so those windows should be pressed back as far as it gets. So that's going to be a little trickier for us to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to change the opacity of that door, and then I'm just going to do another black rectangle over the top of the window. Okay. Now I'm going to be very lazy with this. I'm going to duplicate this quite a bit. Okay, so a couple ways to duplicate. You can click and drag your layer onto a new layer button. Okay. And then you can nudge it into place. So if we zoom in here, we'll see if we can nudge it into place like that. And then you just repeat that until you're happy, right? And some of these might need scaling because these windows, the angle the photograph's taken at, the texture's taken at, they're not 100% uniform. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to collapse these together. I'm going to push Control and I'm going to click on the top one, hold down Shift, click on the bottom one, push Control and E, and then I'm just going to duplicate that. And this is just a way of me saving time. So I've done this kind of in older tutorials. So some people, if you're in my class or you follow my videos, you'll probably notice I've done this quite a bit before. It's a bit of time saving, that's all it is. Okay, so you work at your own pace until you're happy. Again, you could paint this if you want. The main thing is try and use different layers, because then if you mess anything up, we can always go back and fix it. Right, so I'm just going to call this Windows. Right, so we're about ready to apply this. Okay, so I don't need this texture anymore. I'm just going to turn it off. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to start adjusting this stuff. Okay, so I'm going to turn up the opacity of that. So that's the opacity of my door. So that looks fine. Maybe we'll tweak the door main. Okay, so all we're doing here is when we shift down the opacity, we're just changing the level of grey it is. Okay, so that's why if you put stuff on as black, it's quite handy because you can always adjust it later on. So I'm going to do is maybe just adjust my bricks so they're not so bright, and maybe just adjust that door a little bit. That's fine, right? So I'm going to leave the door on full. So what we're going to do now is we're going to save this as a different file. Okay, we're going to go File, Save As, and this time we're going to save it as PNG, and we're going to go underscore BMP. Alright, so underscore bump. We're going to hit save. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go back into Maya, click on our object, find your way over here. Now if this isn't turned on, you can turn on your attribute editor, find your way to your texture. You'll notice there's a box here for bump mapping. Okay, so we click on that box. This should seem familiar. So we get an option for File, and then here we can plug in something. Okay, so we can go to File 2, and then we're going to find our bump. Right, now, word of warning, bump maps go on very hard to begin with. Okay, so if you can see on my screen there, it's actually quite extreme. Okay, and that will happen. It kind of looks like it's turned way up, but you see straight away it's got the effect. So it is actually working. So what you might want to do, guys, is you've got this little option here, bump 2D1. You can control how much that affects, right? And just when I use that slider, you can see it going up and down. Okay, so it reacts in real time. Right, so something a bit more subtle might work. Right, so you think about it, that's two triangle face. We've got a nice bit of detail, but we're actually cheating. We're actually using a texture file. Okay, so in later tutorials, what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to try and go through how to make a normal map, which is like a much more detailed bump map. But that's the end of this tutorial. I hope it made sense. If it didn't make sense, you want to leave me any comments or anything like that. I'm more happy to record another one. But as long as you remember, what's happening is we've got our diffuse texture, okay, which is like our beauty pass. That's our material. It's combining with a black and white image. Whatever's black is flat, whatever's brightest, like white, is raised up, and that's how we're getting that kind of nice bit of detail. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed the tutorial. If you do, by all means, leave me some comments. If you want to see someone else, let me know what you're interested in seeing. Okay, thanks.